The Eagles are making their way through training camp, but so far, one thing has stood out above all else. The Birds got the steal of the draft. Today, we get some huge news on Jihaad Campbell and even get to hear from him on where he's at health-wise and mentality-wise. Also, another young stud stepping up and making huge strides on defense for the Birds. And we even get to hear from Eagles offensive coordinator Kevin Patullo on Jalen Hurts and the rest of the offense. We'll break it all down, but welcome into A to Z Philly. RB. And we started off with one of the young studs on this defense, a guy that we have talked about tirelessly throughout this offseason, needs to make some huge strides, really showed a lot of potential at the end of last season, and that is Jalyx Hunt. Yesterday, for day 3 of camp, they had an open practice. Today, it was more of a walkthrough. So we're getting near the tail end of camp, where we don't really get to see too much and get a lot of insight. But yesterday was a huge day, especially for Jalyx Hunt, who said that he's trying to keep up with Nolan Smith, who set a high bar in the edge rusher room. But even better yet, Jalyx Hunt talked about his offseason. What is he trying to do going into year number 2? And I thought this was a very insightful answer from a young guy like Jalyx. He says that he spent the entire offseason studying and talking to the best pass rushers in the league, and that way he could learn from them and apply it to his own game. He talked to Von Miller, who's now with the Washington Commanders. He talked to Max Crosby and a few others. So I just love the way that everybody on this team is approaching this season. They're not satisfied. They're not complacent. Even these young guys who just won a Super Bowl already, right? Like you think about some young people in general that may not be that mature. They're like, okay, I won already. I won the Super Bowl. I'll get my money in a few years and I'll just chill. It feels like every guy on this team is really hungry and desires winning again and really wants to just, get better in every little margin of their game. So I love this mindset from Jalyx Hunt, and I do think that he's going to take a huge step this year. We heard what Jordan Mailata said about him, right? He looks like Micah Parsons in the flesh. Obviously, a little bit of an overreaction probably, but I love how he's developing. So shout out to Jalyx Hunt. But really, the main story of the day is another young Eagles defender, first-round rookie Jihaad Campbell. And let's be honest, if Jihaad Campbell was healthy, was completely healthy, no shoulder concerns going into the draft, he probably would have been a top 10 to 15 pick, right? He slides all the way to the end of the first round. We just saw this a couple years ago. With who? With Nolan Smith. And look at what Nolan Smith is doing production-wise. He's now the leader in that edge room. And I will be honest here, obviously Zach Bone's the guy, but I think years down the line, Jihaad Campbell could end up being the leader in that linebacker room. Here's what Zach Berman, who's been at the practices, had to say about Jihaad Campbell. He says, 3 practices into camp, Jihaad Campbell is mixing in with the first team defense. It's looking like it's on track for a Bone and Campbell combo on September 4th against the Dallas Cowboys to open the season. And as we know, Nakobe Dean's still rehabbing that injury. But all of the reporters, right? It's like a consensus right now. Jihaad Campbell looks really, really good. He's ahead of schedule. Health-wise, he looks great. And we know what he did last year at Alabama. Like, it's no kidding. There's no, hey, well, this was against a bad team. No. Like, he played at one of the best schools, and he was a production machine. 117 combined tackles, 54 solos, 5 sacks, 12 tackles for loss. This is a guy who is the pitch-perfect chess piece in Vic Fangio's system. Like, he is going to be able to impact the game in multiple ways. As of right now, he's primarily being used as an off-ball linebacker to begin. Maybe he can experiment as an edge rusher. Vic Fangio loves these guys that are multifaceted, that he can plug in here, plug in there. And Jihaad Campbell is 10 times ahead of schedule right now. He looks really good. And we even got to hear from him yesterday. Here's what Jihaad Campbell had to say about his training camp so far.
I'm just blessed that I'm healthy right now. And like I said, man, I'm really happy to be out here on the field and, flying around with our defense, being around the offensive guys, just learning and soaking in a lot of knowledge as much as I can, so I can apply it every time I get in the field.
So when we hear from Jihaad there, and we looked at a couple videos the other day of him practicing, yes, he's still a bit limited, right? Almost like a snap count or a pitch count, but he doesn't look like a guy who's still like major rehabbing an injury. No, like he looks ready to go. And based on what the reporters are saying, this looks like the guy that the Eagles signed up for to draft, that everybody would have drafted in the top 15. So the reason I say the Eagles got the steal of the draft is because they got a guy lower on the board when his value was tremendously higher. And somehow, some way, these types of players continue to fall into the hands of Howie Roseman. Part of it's probably luck. Part of it's playing the board, right? They tried to move up 3 times to get him in the span of an hour, but he fell right into their lap anyway. So it's a good problem to have. When Nakobe comes back, you have to figure some things out. But if Jihaad Campbell can step in right away like a lot of these other Alabama guys, I mean, the Eagles did it again. And this right here should put so much fear into the rest of the NFL. Because Jalyx Hunt and Jihaad Campbell, like those are 2 young pieces that really need to have a big year. You know, the Eagles have to compensate for the fact of losing veterans and guys with experience, even though their Super Bowl defense and their team overall was predicated on youth. Now they got even younger in some areas, and they're going to have to rely on that to really step up and do it again. And you're already getting great signals from guys like Jihaad Campbell and Jalyx Hunt. So I'm really excited about that. The other big question on this team is Kevin Patullo. And every time I've heard this guy talk so far, he talks like a head coach. Like he has a really good IQ for the game. And I feel like nothing's going to phase this guy. Just from what I hear, obviously the game situation is different. But he's talked about being here, how he is comfortable. And, you know, he's learned a lot from Kellen. So I'm excited. And Kevin Patullo says with how good the Eagles receivers are on the perimeter and how good Hurts is at throwing the deep ball, the offense will want to take more chances down the field. He also talked about Jalen Hurts, and I loved how he continues to back his guy. I said this like probably 5 times in the first 2 months of the season last year, how Kellen Moore like just continued to come to the defense of Jalen, even if Jalen was doing something wrong or needed to improve in one area. It wasn't just like, you know, black and white, like here's what he's doing here. No, like you could tell Kellen always had the best interest of Jalen in mind, and I feel like that really boded well with Jalen. Like, I feel like that made him a bit more comfortable. Like, hey, I don't have to be 100% perfect all the time. I have guys in my circle who are going to back me. And I feel like Kevin Patullo is also kind of giving that off so far. He says, watching Jalen Hurts practice over the years, it is clear how much he has improved. He is currently completing 93% of his passes in practice. He says in meetings, Hurts is also doing a great job at pointing out what the defense is doing. Pretty much he's like ahead of schedule. And now he's starting to pick up on things and read things before the snap. And he's telling you, hey, this is what's going to happen here. So he's also learning as a quarterback. And I think, obviously, we've seen the growth on the field in terms of the mechanics and the accuracy, things like that. But he's also improving, you know, from an intelligence standpoint on the game and being able to read the field. And I think that is just one of the indicators of great quarterbacks. And then on the flip side, we have Jalen Hurts here on an interview. And he gives a lot of praise back to Kevin Patullo that he has laid the groundwork for this year's offense. Quote, he has an opportunity to lead the group, and he's been very, very pointed and clear and been leading with great conviction. And when you have that stamp of approval from a guy like Jalen Hurts, that goes a long way, you know, because we saw what happened before with Jalen and Nick. Like, if Jalen isn't happy and he's not completely confident, he'll give you these subliminal answers and he'll leave it very cloudy and up in the air. He's being straightforward, and maybe that's another, you know, learning point of Jalen, and maybe he's getting better at that. But he just came right out and said, yeah, this guy's been laying the groundwork. He's comfortable. I'm comfortable with him. He said it from day one. So I'm excited to see how this duo works together this year. Another guy on offense, Terrace Marshall, who got some praise recently from A.J. Brown, now getting some first-team reps. So keep your eyes on Terrace Marshall. Maybe he could put, you know, end up being that wide receiver 3 replacement next year. Jalen Hurts had a great day yesterday. He hit Devontae Smith for his first touchdown at training camp. He missed a few deep balls, but he had a nice pass to Dallas Goedert over the middle yesterday with pressure. He signaled a first down. He was 10 for 10 to start the day. He did, though, miss a few deep balls, like I said, and there was also some great coverage on the back end from guys like Quinyon Mitchell and also Keely Ringo. But Quinyon so far has been perfect in camp, doing what Quinyon does. Vic Fangio said he's trying to mirror him on both sides, so I think he's going to be so valuable to this defense, of course. And in terms of CB2, still an ongoing battle as we monitor it, but Adoree Jackson was with the starting defense yesterday for the second practice in a row. So after that first rough one from Keely, maybe they're looking in the direction of Adoree Jackson, which I wouldn't be mad about. You know, obviously they want the young guy to win it, but if he's not capable of it and he still needs some more time to develop, okay. You go with the best option. That's what I love about Vic Fangio. He doesn't care what the name is, what the contract is. Best guy on the field at all times. Sidney Brown was also the starting safety with Coop at the nickel. We saw Makuba in some different packages as well. They went dime at one point, and they had Makuba at nickel as well. So, maybe Sidney Brown can win the job. I mean, those are the two ongoing battles. And like I said, Ringo had a really good play. He was guarding A.J. Brown on the perimeter, and Hurts bombed it about 50-ish yards downfield. It was underthrown, and Keeley did a really good job. And last but not least, another young Eagles defender who cannot get lost in the mix, Moro Ojomo, a 7th-round pick a couple years ago, making a strong impression. Played really well at the end of last year. There was a couple games where he was just wreaking havoc. And, the Eagles are going to need that DT depth, right? They draft Ty Robinson, but they're going to need some big snaps from Ojomo. And says he spent a good part of the day yesterday in the backfield operating mainly against Tyler Steen. He's quote-unquote sacked Hurts on one play and later batted down one of his passes. They're not even in pads yet, but a good start for Moro Ojomo. So another young guy who they find as a late-round gem who is giving them solid production and is going to have to account for more snaps this year and take another step, especially when you lose a guy like Milton Williams. And Vic Fangio talked about that a couple days ago. So a lot of promising things that we're hearing from these young Eagle players. Obviously, it's training camp, so how much can you really put into it? But I think we're seeing a really good mentality from this team. I think it's playing out in a good way so far. Give me your thoughts down below. Do you think Jihaad Campbell will be the steal of the 2025 NFL Draft? Appreciate everybody for tapping in. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, I will catch you on the next one.